The Great Famine of the 1840s almost destroyed the Irish and their language. Perhaps 1 million died, many of them Gaelic-speaking. Millions more fled abroad to Britain and the United States, where they were forced to speak English. But perhaps most poignant of all, the Irish rejected their Gaelic as the cause of all their troubles and embraced English for the chance of a better future. By the turn of the century, even in the remote villages, they were beginning to speak the lyrical, eloquent speech that is now known as Irish English. The English-speaking world was enriched with words like smithereens, brat, shenanigan, bother, tantrum, and galore. But more fundamental are the direct translations of Gaelic idioms. These photographs of Aran Islanders were taken by the playwright J.M. Singh. The new kind of English he heard on their lips was the inspiration for his most famous play, the Playboy of the Western World.
You'd be destroyed listening.
Don't be let none to be shy. A fine, treacherous game, lad.
The play tells of Christy Mahan, the man who boasts that he's killed his father. Until he's exposed, Christy and his story fascinate the women of the village.
Oh, there's maybe worse than a dry heart and a widow woman and your glass at night. So you hit him then?
Go on, says he. Or I'll have the devil making garters of your limbs tonight. You will not, if I can help it, says I.
Oh, you were right, surely.
With that, the sun came out between the clouds and the hill, and it's shining green on my face. God have mercy on your soul, says he, lifting aside. Or on your own, says I, raising the law.
Oh, that's a grand story. He tells it lovely.
He gave a drive to the side, and I gave a left to the east. Then I turned round with my back to the north and hit him a blow on the ridge of his skull, laid him stretched out. And he split to the knob of his gullet.
Oh, you were powerful. You were led, surely.
He was very aware that there was a great consciousness of the Western world, as he calls it in his plays, and that in fact their own language and their own traditions were disappearing for economic reasons. And I think it's that consciousness that gives the tension to all of his work.
What'll I be doing now, I ask you? Die a kind of a wonder.
These actors from the west of Ireland are preparing for their production of the Playboy. They're all Gaelic speakers, so they bring a special sympathy to their rehearsal of Singh's Irish-English dialogue. The pronunciation of story as story, for example, comes directly from Irish Gaelic.
You said story there, Melissa.
Yeah, well again, I'm not sure, whether it's story, spudge, spud, or whatever,
I know, this is our problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is no general rule for it. It varies
Yeah.
from meaning to meaning. Mm-hmm. In this case, I do hear it as story. Would you agree?
Yes, yeah,
definitely. I mean, I hate using SHs where I can
avoid them. Yes, because it's such a cliche of the
Yeah.
accent. As a theatre company located in Galway, we're still in what's called a Gaelic area, where Irish is still used. We hear it on the streets. We use it from time to time, or phrases of it ourselves when we're working. I think that fact puts us in closer touch with the structures and rhythms of the language than we would be otherwise.
There he is now, and he crossing the strands. And that the Lord God would send a high wave to wash him from this world.
Have you no shame?
If you go through the structure of some of Singh's sentences, you see that they clearly refer back to Irish structure rather than English structure.
Haven't I after seeing the love light of the star and knowledge shining from her brow? And hearing words would put you thinking on the holy Bridget speaking to the infant saints. And now she'll be turning again and speaking hard words to me.
There in the second speech, haven't I after seen the love light of the star and knowledge? Now that's an extraordinarily difficult one. Let's translate that into Irish and see how much do we have to push around the sentence structure.
Right.
And see whether it's very similar or not. I suggest that it probably is very similar if we do that.
Nach bhfuil mé díreach tar éis solas grá réalt an ólis echo. Excited on Aden.
On Aden, yeah.
And after seeing the love light of the star of knowledge shining from her brow.
No problem.
Yeah.
And it also, in a sense, suggests the intonation, because the way it's written in Irish, it's almost am and I after. It's the same way. Do you not see? Nach bhfuil mé tar éis.
The wild red on here. Lift him on, he said.
Synge always defended the authenticity of his dialogue. He spoke of Irish English as rich and living, and of the Irish imagination as fiery and magnificent and tender.
There now. Drink a health to the wonders of the Western world. The pirates, preachers, potching makers, with the jobbing jockeys, parching peelers, and the juries fill their stomachs selling judgments of the English law.
That's a grand tosh, Sarah Tansy. Now, Christy.
Synge's transformation of the vernacular was soon to be overshadowed by another Irishman, James Joyce, one of the greatest writers of English in the story of the language. Joyce, who universalized the Irish experience, left Dublin for good in 1904 at the age of 22, declaring that he went to forge in the smithy of his soul the uncreated conscience of his race. His work is full of Dublin, and he devoted his long exile in Europe to the world he'd left behind. Should Dublin ever be destroyed, he once claimed, it could be recreated from the pages of his novels. He once said that after his death, the name found engraved on his heart would be Dublin. David Norris of Trinity College, Dublin, is a passionate Joyce scholar.
For Joyce and for an Irish writer, English is not quite to the same extent an instinctual method of speech. Ulysses is a great experiment in language. Joyce, in a way, revenges himself for the taking away of the Irish language by the English, and after the 800 years of occupation, takes the English language and smashing it up into smithereens and hands it back and says, "This is our revenge." And he makes the character Shem boast in Finnegan's Wake that he will wipe any English spook or multiphoniaxically spuking off the face of the earth. Joyce caught the flavour and intonation of the Dublin accent better than any other writer, and particularly the conversation of pubs. He caught the phrases that people would use in their ordinary, everyday speech.
This fellow's a gangster, you know. I didn't think he was, I reckon.
In fact, he caught it so effectively that very often a good pub is known affectionately as a Joycean pub, in which, as in the Cyclops episode of Ulysses, the characters would be hanging around, as Joyce describes them, waiting for what the sky would drop in the way of a drink. And coming out of these marvellously colourful phrases, like, "I declare to God I was blue mouldy for the want of that pint. I could hear it hit the pit of me stomach with a click," which is a lovely description, if you think of it, of somebody who's dying for a drink.
Something always goes wrong.
And this is the setting for the chapter in the novel of Ulysses titled Cyclops. And this is the voice of the nameless narrator, the typical quintessence of the Irish pub. "But begob, I was just lowered in the heel of the pint when I